So Chelsea have gone for Enzo Maresca. And in the usual fashion, today in front of me, I have got the entirety of the Chelsea squad. We're going to go through every single member and say whether they should stay, whether they should go, whether they should be allowed to leave on loan. Before we get into it though, this video is sponsored by Surfshark. More on that later. We should kick it off though with some thoughts on the Enzo Maresca appointment because it has split the Chelsea fan base. It feels a little bit like Chelsea fans haven't got an ideal candidate on the market. They weren't totally sold on Kieran McKenna. They definitely weren't totally sold on Roberto De Zerbi. And I'm not sure they're totally sold yet on Enzo Maresca. And you'd have to say, it's kind of fair enough. This is a manager that's only got 1 year's experience, 1 full season's experience with a senior men's side. Now that full season was pretty exceptional. They nearly hit the 100-point mark. I think they were only 1 win off of breaking the all-time record for the most wins in the second tier of English football at 32. And across the first half of the season, they were on for record pace. They're at 58 points in the first half of the season, Leicester. Second half of the season, not quite so good. 39 points. There were some pretty disappointing losses in there too. And it's fair to say he was a little bit outspoken about some of the PSR issues that were facing Leicester, the lack of arrivals in January. The fan base started to get a little bit annoyed with some of the rhetoric he was coming out with. So I guess it's going to be kind of interesting to see whether that rhetoric of not being happy with PSR issues and transfer issues continues to a club like Chelsea, which might face similar troubles. The one thing you can say about him, though, is he has a very clear idea of how he wants to play football. It's a 4-3-3 on paper, isn't it? It's this 3-2-5 in possession with a fullback tucking into midfield. You know, at Leicester, it was the right back. At Chelsea, it might well be the left back. Out of possession, it sits into a 4-5-1. Very, very high press football. It's really a Pep Guardiola template. The one question that sticks in my mind, though, is this an actual upgrade on Pochettino? And we're going to kind of answer that throughout this video. Chelsea fans, I want you to let me know whether you think it's an upgrade in the comments below. 37 players to get through today, and we're going to start with the goalkeepers, where there is going to have to be a change. I really think a goalkeeper is going to have to arrive this summer, despite the fact Robert Sanchez is only a recent recruitment. He's got a contract till 2030. You've got Petrovic. He's got a contract till 2029. The way Enzo wants to play, the goalkeeper is extremely involved in build-up. You think of Mads Hermansen at Leicester, and whenever you watch them, there are times when he's in line with the centre-backs, playing extremely advanced when they shift to that back three in possession. Do I see Robert Sanchez or Petrovic being able to do that, given how they've played and operated this season? I'm not sure. And if that's the case, I would probably sell Robert Sanchez. It's a bit of a toss of a coin because whoever comes in will have to be the new number one. So you're really looking for a backup. Robert Sanchez, you know, he's 26 years old now. He's had that knee problem throughout this season. He does have a much better post-shot expected goals record than Georgi Petrovic. But his age profile and what he has in his back catalogue at Brighton makes me think he will have more suitors. So that's the reason I put him in sell. I was talking about Petrovic's post-shot expected goals record, and he conceded 7 more goals than he should have by the underlying numbers. Not a great season, but not a terrible season either. There was definite positives to his game, and when Sanchez fell out of form with that injury, there were times when Petrovic looked pretty solid, and I think as a backup, he's absolutely fine, so I would be keeping him. As for Kepa and Marcus Bettinelli, Kepa has to be sold. You know, it's not really worked on loan at Real Madrid this season, has it? He's got a contract till 2025. Any sort of fee you can get for him, you've done well. And Bettinelli, really a third choice goalkeeper, a fine servant for the club. He gets kept. Let's move into the centre-backs, where we start with Levi Colwill, who is definitely going to be a keep. He's played the majority of minutes this season as a left-back. It's actually the most senior starts of any season in his career. But even those 20 Premier League starts have been hampered by injury. That toe problem towards the back end of the season has been really, really critical for him. It's really effectively stopped him going to Euro 2024. And if Levi's going to be watching Euro 2024 from home or on his holidays, make sure you can too. Let's say you're poolside and you want to watch the big games. What do you do? Well, you need to get yourself a Surfshark VPN. That is today's sponsor. Surfshark is a VPN that keeps all of your data safe by encrypting all of that data between the device and the internet. But most crucially for all of you football fans at home, you can also watch all of the UK's channel coverage whilst you're abroad. Where you would usually be blocked from viewing the content abroad by the BBC or ITV, you can change your location back to the UK and hear Roy Keane, Ian Wright and the rest of the gang wherever, whenever you want. Or if you want to watch a different nation's coverage, let's say you wanted to watch French coverage with French commentary, you can by switching your location and your IP address to one of 100 different countries with Surfshark. And here's the real clincher. You can use your Surfshark VPN on an unlimited number of devices. So click on the link in the description and use my promo code Joe Tomlinson, all one word, or you can simply scan the QR code right here to get 4 months for free. It's perfect for the Euros. Surfshark also offers a free 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's literally no risk to this one. Next up, we've got Axel Disasi, and what we have to be doing throughout this video is being very honest, especially when it comes to PSR issues, and Chelsea do face some PSR issues. There's been a few reports that they won't be as badly affected as first thought because of that hotel sale within Blueco. If that does count and get passed through the Premier League financial audit, then maybe they won't have to sell as many players as we first thought. And that's got to be a positive for a player like Axel Disasi, who at 26 years old, I think he's fortunate to have a contract here until 2029. He's put up a fair amount of minutes, the 5th most minutes of any Chelsea player in the squad under Pochettino. But there are significant holes to his game. I don't think he's particularly fantastic on the ball. He's definitely prone to an error. And if the right offer came in, I'd be tempted to sell him. The length of these contracts really starting to hit home for Chelsea now. Benoit Badiashile under contract until 2030. 3 years younger, though, than Axel Disasi and a left footer. For Maresca, that's going to be crucial. Having some left-footed centre-backs is essential for how he wants to play. Colwill and Badiashile offer 2 alternatives in the left-sided centre-back role. Colwill can also play in that left-back role if needed to go into the back 3 to allow the right-back to tuck into midfield. Wesley Fofana's up next. You've got to keep him. You spent £75 million on him. He's under contract until 2029. And he didn't play a single minute under Poch. His injury problems, I feel so sorry for him. Since the broken leg that suffered at Leicester, he's had the ACL injury. It's just not happened for him. I really hope he can get back to full fitness this pre-season, because what we saw of him when he was 2021 was remarkable. He's 23 now, so he's still got plenty of time to re-find his form, and I hope for his sake he can do it next season. That leaves Trevor Chalobah, who is 24 years old, and if it's a shootout between Chalobah and Disasi, I choose Chalobah. He started 14 of the last 15 games for Chelsea. He really improved post-thigh injury. And for me, the foundations at the back look much more solid when he's in it than when Disasi's in it. If he has to be sold because of PSR issues, if he has to drop down there, it's with extreme reluctance. And if that's the case, they've got to sign a centre-back. Thiago Silva, we can move on pretty quickly from. That contract exit has been allowed to happen. He's, of course, leaving the club. 39 years old. One of the best free transfers in Premier League history. An awesome servant. Like Pochettino at the start of the season, I kind of forgot about Malang Sarr there. But yeah, Malang Sarr in the sell categories, under contract till 2025. Of course, he spent some time on loan at Monaco. Didn't really happen for him, did it? Just the 8 starts. It's pretty much nailed on. He'll leave this summer. Let's start talking fullbacks, because Chelsea have quite a lot on the books. One of them is Ian Maatsen, who anybody who's watched this channel recently knows I absolutely adore. He's been remarkable since joining Borussia Dortmund, be it as an inverted fullback, which we're going to talk about in a second, or as a flying wingback. He's just done it all, been everywhere. There's absolutely no surprise that Borussia Dortmund are interested in making that deal permanent. He's, of course, got a £35 million release clause that any club can trigger. There's going to be a lot of interest in Ian Maatsen. Borussia Dortmund are reportedly trying to get him for cheaper than that. He is only 22. I think Enzo Maresca has to be banging his door down and having a conversation with him early. And that conversation has to revolve around keeping him. I understand PSR issues might bite, and he might be one of the boys on the chopping blocks because he's an academy product that can be 100% profit. Totally, I get all of that. But he might well be Chelsea's best left back. As for Alfie Gilchrist, he should be our first loan. He's actually done pretty well under Pochettino. When Pochettino needed a player to come in, deliver some of that academy youth spirit, bit aggressive from the fullback role, he's done a job. But with the return of Reece James, with Malo Gusto's minutes fairly limited and the centre-back options, for me, he's not going to get much playing time. Better to send him on a championship loan. Back in the left-back slot, we've got Ben Chilwell, who I'd be tempted to see if I could find a suitor for. He's 27 years old now, and we know what we're going to get from Ben Chilwell. His attacking output is much better than his defensive output. As an outside left that's going to hug the touchline, he can be very dangerous, but he also has a spotty injury record, isn't potentially going to invert into that central midfield role like Enzo Maresca wants from his fullbacks. I don't know if it's the best fit for his system. And what you also have with Ben Chilwell is a potential market. There are not an abundance of high-level left-backs on the market, and teams right now tend to have quite spotty left-back issues. If that's the case, I think Ben Chilwell will have an awful lot of suitors if he's on the market. This could be a player Chelsea could get a fee for, keep Ian Maatsen, keep Marc Cucurella as his backup. And yeah, I am going to keep Marc Cucurella. At the start of the season, Chelsea were very willing to let him go. He nearly joined Man United on loan. It's just as well he stayed, because the back end of the season in that inverted role, he was actually really good. Very aggressive off the ball. His defensive numbers have always popped, even since his Brighton days. Over 4 tackle interceptions per game. Not as good in the final third, but if he's going to invert into that defensive midfield role, he could support Caicedo. He could be a good player in this system. Reece James is your captain. I know he's only played 400 minutes this season. Just injuries. Horrendous time with injuries. Reece James obviously came back, got the ban. He's going to be banned for the first 3 games of next season. But he's probably, alongside Cole Palmer, the most talented player in the squad. So he's an obvious keep. He's also your captain. And that brings us to Malo Gusto, who is remarkable. 1,700 minutes of football in your first Premier League campaign is a big number. And look at the output he's able to produce. Defensively, he is so solid. On the ball, super composed. Goes past players like they're not there. 4 progressive carries from the fullback zone. Yeah, Chelsea have just got themselves one of the best young fullbacks in the world. And the fact he's probably a backup to Reece James stinks. Into the midfield, you've got the starting defensive midfielder in the Enzo Maresca system. For me, that is Moises Caicedo, who actually had a totally underrated season. Some YouTube fan channels were talking about him as being one of the flops of the season. What a load of rubbish. I know that he cost £115 million, the most expensive transfer in Premier League history, but his numbers mirrored almost exactly his Brighton days. 4 to 4.5 tackles and interceptions per 90, very similar passing numbers. And once he started to develop and grow into that shirt at Chelsea, I actually thought in the second half of the season he was probably their second or third best player. And if we look at the Enzo Maresca system with that 3-2-5 in possession, he is going to be the defensive midfielder that sits in front of the 3. One of the fullbacks will tuck in. I would imagine it's actually going to be the left back to allow Reece James to become the flying fullback. If that's the case, Maatsen or Cucurella tuck in alongside Caicedo. That does leave some interesting questions about players like Enzo Fernadnez, though. It also leaves questions over Romeo Lavia. He's obviously going to be a keep, but 33 minutes of football this season. Chelsea's injury record needs addressing urgently. Leslie Ugachukwu, we're going to loan because this season hasn't played anywhere near enough minutes, 300, but he is one of the few players that has the height, the physicality, the presence in the middle of the park to help Chelsea out. They're quite a small team in midfield, Chelsea. Not a lot of presence in there. Another player who will go on loan again is Andre Santos. That terrible start loan at Nottingham Forest. He's actually really progressed a little bit at Strasbourg. He's won their April and May Player of the Months, hasn't he? But he's not going to be a starter, I don't think, at Chelsea. So I would loan him again. I would also loan Cesar Casadei. He obviously has played under Maresca. He played under Maresca in the first half of the season when he was on loan at Leicester. So he's going to understand the system. He's going to understand what is needed and required from him. But when he was at Leicester, just the 8 starts, a lot of substitute appearances. Does that mean Maresca didn't trust him? And frankly, with Lavia there, with Caicedo there, with Enzo there, I know he was recalled because they didn't have much cover, Chelsea. But even when he was recalled, he only picked up 79 minutes of Premier League football. You've got to get him more than that. Okay, that brings us to Enzo and Conor Gallagher. 2 of the biggest talking points in this video. Now look, Enzo is still only 23 years old. He's very, very young, and he was playing injured towards the back end of the season. He was playing with a hernia problem. There was this sort of narrative developing amongst rival fans anyway, that were trying to banter off Chelsea fans, that Chelsea were a better team without Enzo in it. And the facts started to correlate because Chelsea started to win lots of games when Enzo was injured. I don't necessarily subscribe to that idea. I'm not sure Poch ever got the best out of Enzo. I felt like he played a little bit too advanced. For me, you see the best of Enzo Fernadnez when he's deep and he's progressing the ball. You look at these numbers, nearly 9 progressive passes from a deep line midfielder is a remarkable number. That's where you want him. Picking up the ball either in the first or second phase and progressing it to the final third. It's going to be really interesting to see under Maresca how that happens, because classically we've seen at Leicester the 2-8s progress into the final third into quite advanced positions actually to form that jagged front five. If Enzo's one of those players, does that mean he's not going to be asked to progress the ball and it's Caicedo who's going to be asked to do that? There's question marks over how Fernandes gets used. But whatever those question marks are, you still have to keep him. He's under a contract until 2030. He cost £105 million, and he is a really good footballer. Conor Gallagher, I really think Conor Gallagher had a great season. Chelsea fans online seem to banter him all the time. If you ever meet a Chelsea fan in the flesh that goes to the bridge regularly, they love Conor Gallagher. And it's easy to see why. He's a personification and embodiment of what you want from a Chelsea player. He bleeds for the badge, he throws himself around, he's an absolute workhorse, but he also has quality on the ball. These are not numbers of a player who is simply just a workhorse. No, he's very well-rounded, Conor Gallagher. He contributed to 12 goals, which doesn't sound like loads, but was actually the third most in the Chelsea squad in the Premier League. So I really think Chelsea should be fighting tooth and nail to keep him. PSR issues probably will bite, and he probably will have to leave the club. I would imagine he was one of the main sticking issues with Pochettino staying or going. I reckon Poch walked in there and went, I want to keep Gallagher. And they went, we can't keep Conor Gallagher. If that's the case, it's a real shame. Carney Chukwuemeka as well, I would keep. He looked really good at the start of the season. There were bursts and signs of an exceptional player. But again, injuries hit too hard. And that's been the case for almost 2 seasons now. He's played just 500 minutes of football since joining from Aston Villa in 2022. Heading into the forwards, and there's lots to discuss, particularly these three, I think, which we'll come to. But we'll start with Cole Palmer. Obviously a keep, most goals and assists of any Premier League player this season. He's worked under Enzo Maresca before as well. We can't forget that. Enzo Maresca, obviously a Pep Guardiola disciple, done loads of work in the Manchester City youth system, and Cole Palmer was a key member of his team. He classically utilised him on the right, either as an inverted right winger or kind of as an inside right, playing with a player outside him. I think that's exactly how we'll use him again at Chelsea. Christopher Nkunku, yeah, being kept, but we need to see him on the pitch more. His injury problems, as they were at Leipzig, poor this season. Now, there's obviously nothing he can do about this, but separate injuries, hips, hamstrings have caused problems this season. At Leipzig, very similar sort of story, wasn't it? Lots of time missed, 4 separate injuries across the course of last season. Fingers crossed that stops, because as we've seen when they've been able to get him on the pitch, he will score goals. Mykhailo Mudryk, I still think is a keep. When I put a tweet out earlier asking Chelsea fans for their opinions on the squad, quite a few people said to sell him. And this season that we're about to come into, under another new manager, is make or break for Mudryk. He's a weird player because he is capable of these moments where you're like, bloody hell, where did that come from? Where he just suddenly goes past 2 players, or rasa a pass, or plays a cross-field pass, and you're like, clearly high-level quality. But 1,500 minutes, 5 goals, 2 assists, these numbers don't jump off the page at you. And with the amount he cost, he really needs to start delivering now. There's going to be a slot open on that left wing. I'm convinced of it in this Maresca system. He needs to gobble that up. Raheem Sterling will have worked with Maresca at Manchester City. They're going to know each other. But at 29 years old, I'm erring towards the sale category. Again, though, he's got a contract until 2027. 12 goal involvements in the Premier League, by the way. Level with Conor Gallagher as the 3rd most goal involvements in this squad. So as much as Chelsea fans have hammered him at times this season, some of it's gone way too far. Some of the abuse he's copped this season has been a joke. You know, I do think clubs will be interested. Diego Moreira, who's of course been on loan, I would loan again. Noni Madueke, I would be keeping. Real flashes of brilliance this season. There have been moments where, attitude-wise, trying to take the penalties off of Cole Palmer. There's been problems. He's rubbed the fan base up the wrong way. But we've seen moments of individual class. And that's resulted in 7 goal involvements in about 1,000 minutes of football, which is not too bad in the Premier League. 13 starts this season. Most of them, it felt like he had an impact in. There were moments where he was being dropped and the next week Sterling came in. And it was almost like, why have you dropped Madueke after what has been a really positive week? I think there's going to be big opportunities for him this season. Amari Hutchinson, I would just loan straight back to Ipswich. Kieran McKenna is going to stay there now. We saw him on the open top bus parade say, what's the one thing you want for your birthday, Kieran? He said Amari Hutchinson to return. It's a Premier League club. He's going to play nearly every minute. He put up 14 goal involvements in the Championship for him. This is a no-brainer. Washington, another player that needs a loan. And that brings us to the final 4 sort of senior strikers, you would say. For me, Armando Broja is a sell. They got a great deal when they let him go on loan to Fulham. Fulham paid £4 million and he didn't score a goal. I don't even think he played a full 90 minutes. So he would be in my sell. Was definitely going to be interested Premier League clubs in him. I saw some Chelsea fans, when I put out a video previously about Broja, saying they wanted sort of 30 million for him. I just don't see it being realistic for a player that hasn't ever scored 10 goals in a Premier League season or in any senior season, I think, other than maybe when he was in Holland. 10 to 15 million pounds for an academy player counts towards your PSR. He's going to go this summer. As should Romelu Lukaku. You know, Napoli are reportedly interested. Antonio Conte is going there. Just get a fee. Any fee at this stage. It's one of the worst signings in Premier League history. One of, not the, but it's a contender, isn't it? As for David Datro Fofana, maybe another loan. He's been okay at Burnley. And there are certainly going to be interested loan parties in the Premier League. But it would only leave you with one recognised number 9 in Nicholas Jackson. So I think Chelsea will have to dip into the market, despite the fact Nicholas Jackson has had a really good season. He's got the second most goal involvements at the club. He's still only 22 years old, and that was his debut season in the Premier League. It takes players a little bit of time to adapt. His back-to-goal play does need some work, but his link-up play is really good. He's underrated with the ball at his feet. He's underrated in terms of chance creation. His shot-creating action numbers are really impressive. Obviously, he's not the most natural finisher, and I don't think he's ever going to be the most natural finisher, but given the fee they paid for him, some of the hate he's got this season has been way over the top. So that was my stay or go. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. And of course, this video was sponsored by Surfshark, so make sure you click the link at the top of the description and use the code Joe Tomlinson.